Hello, and welcome to episode 164 of the Book Binge, where today we're doing yet another monthly reading wrap up and TBR video. I had I would say, a pretty decent reading month in June, but it didn't go quite as well as I was hoping it would. Got some other plans kind of mixed up. It threw in a couple books that I wasn't sure I was going to read, or rather got a book thrown in there that I wasn't sure I was going to read, and then had at least one other book that I wanted to get done but did not get done in spite of that. Yet, considering how much has been on my mind over the course of the last few weeks, I am a little bit surprised by just how much I did get read, even though it really isn't that much, all things considered. It's been kind of a weird month, and I think July is going to be a little bit weirder, especially since I have even bigger plans for July now that I'm seeing it, and I don't think it's going to happen. But, that's kind of how all of these videos go for me. I always, read a little bit less than I plan, and then I continue to plan big months. This is going to be a little bit more of the same. But with that being said, let's talk about what I read over the month of June, starting, of course, with the regular at this point, Infinite Jest. I continued this book. I am now about 2/3 of the way through. I've read all but the last 2 chapters, so I've read 26 out of 28 chapters. But no, you didn't mishear me, and I didn't misspeak. I'm only about 2/3 of the way through. The last 2 chapters are about the final third of the book. I'm going to read the next chapter over the course of July, and then the last chapter in August, I believe, is how I'm going to end up splitting it out. If it takes me a little bit longer, that's okay, because that's how I have my reading diary videos planned out. But that's how things look for the moment. Yeah, I still have way more to go, all things considered, and it's a little bit terrifying in its own way. The next thing that I got read in June, but wasn't actually June, because I actually got it done over the last few days of May before the turn of the month, but it was after I had recorded my last reading wrap up and TBR video. A lot of things kind of got mixed up, chaotic over that weekend because of going on a vacation that I did. But Child of God by Cormac McCarthy was my immersive read for the month, or at least it was my Cormac McCarthy read for June that I got done before June even started, like I said. This one was a little bit shorter. I think it is the shortest one of his full-length novels. Not anything like Sunset Limited, for example, which is more like a play, and it's only about 2 hours. This was about like 3.5 to 4 hours, somewhere in that range. So I think it is his shortest of his 12 actual novels, and I think it was better off for it. It was enjoyable. It was enjoyable in spite of the fact that I'm not exactly sure how or why I enjoyed it, but it kind of clicked. And I thought that the character study that McCarthy had on display for that novel with the character of Lester something or other, I forget his last name off the top of my head. Lester Ballard, that's the name. The character study was very good, and that made it worth reading. It was another basically hit for McCarthy, which came as a little bit of a surprise to me. Next up, I read The Long Walk by Stephen King under the pseudonym of Richard Bachman, the second book in this collection, and the second reread that I'm doing of King, because I originally read Rage and The Long Walk back in 2020. Now, where Rage held up just as much as I remembered it doing, The Long Walk didn't hold up as well, but that's because I didn't quite love the ending this time around, whereas I didn't have any issues with it the first time. And that's okay. The book is still very good, and the fact that King wrote it so young was really, really impressive. So I'm not going to, say anything against the book, but it did, have a slight bit less hold up quality for me on the reread. But that's okay, because it is still, like, pretty sure a top 5 King book for me at this point. Is that true? I think it's probably true. I've only read like 13 of his books at this point, so I'm not 100% sure if that's the case, but Long Walk should still be up there regardless. Next up, we have another one of these omnibus bindings of an author. This time it is Michael Crichton, and I finally read the second book in this collection, The Terminal Man. After over 2 years of not reading Crichton, I got around to it, and The Terminal Man was pretty good. I basically went into The Terminal Man not really knowing what it was about, which made for a very fun deja vu moment after reading a section in Infinite Jest that talked about a very specific set of things, a very specific topic that The Terminal Man also has included, basically in the same, worded in the same way, more or less. And like I said, not knowing what The Terminal Man was about made it so that reading these two sections within a couple days of each other was a very funny and strange deja vu type moment that made me feel like I was insane for a little bit of time, but that was something that happened while reading it. The Terminal Man was pretty good. It wasn't like amazing. I wouldn't say it was as good as the Andromeda Strain. I think The Terminal Man is actually mostly held back by what it doesn't contain versus what it does, i.e. nothing that is in it is really that bad. In fact, nothing in it, I would say, is like actively bad. Most of the gripes that I have are just the fact that not enough of that story is on the page. I feel like it could have been and should have been longer to really do what it was trying to do. If you want a little bit more information on how I felt about that one, I'm actually pretty proud of that review that I did on Goodreads. Only about 1,000 words long, so if you want to go check that out on my Goodreads profile, if you just search or find the review by King Crusoe, that's how you can do that. That was the other thing that I read. And then the final thing that I read over the course of the month was a little like buddy read type of thing that I had going on with a couple of friends that, you know, we just threw in spur of the moment, basically. It was determined like, I don't know, a week and a half into the month that we were going to do this, so it wasn't on my TBR last time around. I decided to join my friends reading Star Wars Light of the Jedi, so the first book in this 5-book series of the High Republic stuff, which does fall within the new Star Wars canon, which I'm not as enthusiastic about as Legends, for example, but I thought the book was pretty good. There were some aspects to how it explored the Jedi Order and the Force that I'm still not sure how I feel about those things, but overall the story was pretty good. The first part especially had the stakes and the whole storyline and the plotting, and the execution of all of that done so well that I found myself really engaged. I had to go through that whole first part, which was like 4 hours, 3.5 hours or something like that, all in one go, which is pretty abnormal for me, so that was pretty entertaining. Probably going to go on to the second book here in a couple months, not in July, spoiler alert for the TBR for July, but that one was one that I enjoyed going through, and especially doing as an audiobook read, since I wasn't really in the mood for doing another McCarthy. After doing Child of God, I have still a few more McCarthy books to go through, but I was like, I don't really feel like doing that. So when people decided to throw that in, and it was cheap enough to just buy all of those first 4 books, it was cheaper to just buy them outright rather than using credits or anything like that. I was just like, you know what, yeah, that's worth it. I'll go ahead and do that. So I picked those up and read the first book. I quite enjoyed it. As for short story related stuff, I did do a novella that was The Sandman by E.T.A. Hoffman, which is a rather intriguing story, one that definitely encourages a lot of thought and analysis to it. So that Short Story Sundays video is going to be an interesting one at the end of this month. But I'm not sure how good of a job I did on the analysis front there. I'm not a great analyzer when it comes to like interpretation, and especially when it's vague content that is meant to be interpreted and doesn't always have like a straight answer. So, you know, like I said, the analysis of that video probably isn't the greatest, but I tried my best on that, and I did enjoy the story. Not like I don't love it, but I did enjoy it. For my book of the month, however, I kind of went through and thought about this, and I realized that of the 3 books that I completed, only one of them was 5 stars. That was The Long Walk, the reread of that, so I'm going to go ahead and count that as my book of the month for June. So not necessarily a super exciting month as far as that goes, because I knew what that book was, and I had read it before 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago at this point, and, you know, it re-satisfied. I was hoping that something else would kind of jump up and take that book of the month spot, but that one definitely goes up there. As for my favorite short story, obviously The Sandman was the only short story / novella there that I read, so that one kind of wins it by proxy, but, you know, depends on if you even want to consider that in that section, just because it was the only one of those that I read this month. And having gone through all of that, I did mention earlier that July had a little bit more of an ambitious schedule planned out, and well, looking at my list here definitely makes it look a little bit scarier, but it is pretty scary nonetheless. I will, of course, start off with just continuing Infinite Jest. I kind of tipped my hand over in the earlier section of this video by saying I plan to read chapter 27, so the next like 190 pages. When you include footnotes, that'll probably be like 200, 205, maybe 210 pages of the book, so I plan to go through that this month. I'll probably take a couple of weekends to get through, which means that the amount of time that I'm going to have to actually get through the rest of this is probably not going to be enough, because throwing in another buddy read along type of thing that didn't really decide on until recently means that's probably going to be the one that has to be thrown out of the schedule if I don't have time, and I don't think I'm going to have time. But if nothing else, I'll just expand that to take the rest of the summer or something like that. Either way, yeah, Infinite Jest is the first thing that I'm going to work on. Going to continue that. Going to get right up on the end of that so that I can finish it, hopefully, in August. But of the other stuff that I'm going to read, let's talk first about something that I really wanted to get done in July but did not get the chance to. That is The Blood of Olympus by Rick Riordan, the final book in Heroes of Olympus. I have my video, my ranking and review for this whole series, basically planned to come out here in September, I think, the first couple weeks of September. So, or maybe it's actually August, and that's why I have to get it done this month. I was hoping to get it done in June to be a little bit ahead. But yeah, I think that the video for this comes out in about a month. So like, this is my main priority for the first week of the month, or the first couple weeks of the month. Besides continuing Infinite Jest, I'm definitely going to be taking a couple days to focus on reading this. And as I continue working on a lot of videos this week and next week, I'm going to be reading this in the time that videos take to render. So that's going to be a big priority for me here. It's actually finishing up the series well over a year after I started the reread of it. I did not anticipate that the reread of the series would take so long, and I kind of upset that it did, but that is how the cookie crumbles sometimes. I'm excited to actually go to that and hope that that holds up really well, because while the series overall holds up, I don't remember that being my favorite, and I would love to be like surprised and discover that that's like my actual favorite of the series for some reason. Riordan did make a couple of odd POV choices with that one compared to previous books, so we'll see how that goes, but I am looking forward to it nonetheless. Otherwise, the other main thing that I am trying to get done this month, because I have diary videos scheduled for the last couple weeks of July for this, is actually continuing Wheel of Time with the prequel New Spring. Now, there are a few different spots at which people sometimes recommend reading New Spring. Those are after Book 5, The Fires of Heaven, after Book 7, A Crown of Swords, and after Book 10, or the publishing order after Crossroads of Twilight. And because of reading schedule stuff this year, and the fact that I was not entirely sure how enthused I would be about continuing Lord of Chaos after Fires of Heaven this year, I planned to read New Spring in between and still have big gaps in between. When I finished Fires of Heaven, I was like, man, I don't know if I can wait that long to actually get to this, because there's going to be a couple months break, but my reading has been so chaotic, especially with Infinite Jest thrown in there, that I ended up naturally getting to this point in July and not even being able to think about reading this one, even if I did have a chance to start something. It just wasn't even on my mind until I was looking at my TBR and stuff. So I am excited to get into this one. I know it's not one of the popular books in the series, but I do have a friend that is really into it, and I don't think I will personally have any reason to dislike it actively, so I do think I will enjoy it. And the fact that it is only like 300 pages, and these pages have far less words than any of books 4 through 6 actually has me pretty encouraged. I could probably read this in like maximum 2 weekends, so even though I have it planned to spread out over 3 weekends, that means I'll be able to read this and Infinite Jest over a few weekends and handily be able to finish that. It is super encouraging to be able to have a book that small in this series, especially since Lord of Chaos is going to be next a little bit later this year, and that one's a bit more intimidating as far as size is concerned. But yeah, that is like Blood of Olympus and New Spring are probably like the top priorities for my reading this month. So those are the ones that I'm going to get done. As for the sort of read along thing that I kind of hinted at before, let me see if I can find like an image to show you of it. So after about 15 millennia, it finally decided to load on my Kindle. It would have been so much faster if I just pulled up my order that I did on Amazon. This book is going to be The Failures by Benjamin Lyer. So a book that would not be on my radar, especially since it releases today at the release of this video, because, well, I just am generally not looking at a whole bunch of new books, and I'm not super into exploring a lot of stuff that I might be interested in reading because it has proven to be a bad habit for my Kindle buying. But I did decide to purchase a copy of The Failures to maybe join a buddy read along type of thing going on in the Red Company, because Chris Verrocchio, my favorite author, as that top shelf might be able to indicate to you, did a blurb for this book and said it was pretty good and has a lot of like Dark Souls from Soft vibes in it. So a lot of people were like, yeah, I'm kind of interested in giving that a shot. Like I said earlier, this might be the one book that I like have to kick off of the TBR for the month if I don't have time, because I'm probably not going to have time to get through all of my reading this month. If nothing else, I'll try to get it started, and it might just like bleed into August or something like that. And since there are going to be plenty of people joining the read along at the Red Company, and not everybody is a quick reader, a la myself, I think it'll be fine for this to take a little bit longer for me to personally read, especially since I tend to enjoy reading books a little bit better when I'm not the first one reading them, because everybody else gets to react to my comments and stuff afterwards. And since I'm such a dramatic reactor when I'm reading, it ends up being a fun time for everybody. When that's the case, we'll see what happens with the book, but I do hope to maybe be able to join for that alongside everybody else. Otherwise, I think my audio immersive read for the month is going to be, at the very least, the first one of these books, hopefully two of these books. Another Cormac McCarthy book, this time for The Passenger, which is not one that I'm super confident that I'll enjoy. Maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't. I don't know really anything about it, so we'll just kind of see what happens with it. Premise-wise, it seems like something I should enjoy well enough, but that is not always a guarantee. If I have time to also be able to tack on the much shorter Stella Maris, the Partner, like duology book with it, I hope to be able to do so. This one I think I actually will enjoy, and largely because of doing it on audio slash immersive, and because of the experience that I had with the Sunset Limited. Concept wise, and in terms of the topics that this book sets out to cover, I think this one has a decent chance of being one of my favorites just on that front, but also the fact that, like the Sunset Limited, which as the audiobook, for example, it is just a play, so it's just two characters talking back and forth the whole time with the occasional interjection from a narrator. Those two characters are voiced by different people, and those two people were actual actors as far as that audiobook was concerned, and that really led me to enjoying what was going on there and not really having to be, too upset about the way that McCarthy writes, for example, because it was a totally different setting. This is similar. It is a novel. It's not a play, but it is framed, I believe, in that everything in the book is just two characters talking back and forth. Now, if I were just reading the physical book with the way that McCarthy does punctuation, i.e. basically no punctuation, especially with dialogue, that would probably frustrate me to no end. But because of doing it audio, I think I have a very good chance of liking it, because I believe it is similarly framed in that the audio narrators, there are a couple different narrators for the different characters, and like I said, concept-wise, I could enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to Stella Maris. I'm going to do The Passenger before I get to Stella Maris, but I am looking forward to reading both of these by McCarthy and getting that much closer to the end of my McCarthy journey and being able to make a video ranking and talking about tier ranking, I guess, of all of McCarthy's books. Otherwise, the only other thing that I have confirmed going on this month as far as reading is concerned is a copy editing project, which I guess I can kind of reveal because Christopher himself has talked about it. He has said in a couple of different places that Tales of the Sun Eater Volume 4 is with the copy editor. I'm the copy editor, just like I was for Tales Volume 3 last year. So that is exciting. I am getting started on that one. I haven't gone through to any of the stories yet, but I have read a couple of the stories before and covered them for various other projects. So theoretically, this one should be a pretty quick and clean pass, all things considered. But I am looking forward to reading this one, as there is one story in it, or there's two stories in it that I have not read yet, and one of them is the brand new story, and I'm really excited for what it is. Christopher's excited to see how I feel about it. So that's the other project that I have going on this month. Otherwise, or if I have time, the maybe read section of this is, it's really ambitious. I don't think I'm going to be able to get through everything else on this list, but if I'm able to, I'm going to start throwing in some of the short stories of Night Shift by Stephen King here and there, just so that I can be able to review this in a few months like I hope to be able to do. So I might be able to start throwing things in with that every once in a while. The other thing that if I have time, I'm going to try to read this month, otherwise I will be reading it in August. This one is Uzumaki by Junji Ito, and yeah, this is going to be the next manga that I try to tackle on the channel, and since it is manga, I should be able to read it much quicker and without as much issue. It should only take me a couple of days maximum, so even if I don't have time to finish everything else already on this month's reads, there's always the chance that I might be able to throw that one in just because I can. At first, my July plans were pretty laid back, all things considered, but they are definitely not laid back anymore. I have quite a bit going on, and I feel like this always manages to happen to me. Hopefully, I manage to get caught up on some of these reading plans and not having to push too many things too far back, and hopefully I'm able to get a little bit more caught up on multiple other projects that I'm working on, but with these reading plans and all that, who knows what could happen on that front. So wish me luck, because I am sure as heck going to need it. But that is the end of this video. Thank you for checking it out if you did. This Thursday is going to be my next Infinite Jest diary, so if you've read that book or if you've read about as far as I've gotten to, totally check that video out, as I'm going to be that book is definitely breaking my brain, and it has been constant shifting from I absolutely love this book to I'm having a really hard time enjoying this book, and I want others to struggle with me, which is not necessarily the best thing to say, but that whatever, I guess. Again, thank you for watching this video. If you did, I'll be back in that diary if you were interested in watching it.